online world is your oyster. Start typing things in about that thing that brings you curiosity and let it take you down that rabbit hole of information.
Hi, and welcome to Conscious Pathways, the podcast where we explore the intersection of education and social justice through transformative conversations. I'm your host, Brittany, and I'm so happy that you're joining me today. I want to send a special shout out and thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you want to join Patreon for just $5 a month, you can get access to my monthly newsletter where I'll go over resources and a deeper dive into conversations and topics from this month's episodes. I'll also be sharing resources as well through there. You have access to Ask an Expert, so you can ask me or one of my expert guests a question that I can answer live on the podcast. And also early access to the podcast. So no ads, ad-free, early access. So lots of really great fun things are happening there. You'll get some really special behind the scenes, and I can really just be a little bit more of myself on Patreon. So if you want more ways to interact with me and a beautiful, vibrant community, you can join my Patreon. It is linked down below. And just again, special shout out and thank you to those subscribers. I appreciate you. Today I am joined by a magnificent lady, Mayra Gómez-Sánchez. Mayra is a launch and sales conversion copywriter and marketing strategist who connects the public to diversity-driven leaders by writing culturally relevant and genuine copy. She believes that authentic marketing to today's diverse public can help bridge the cultural divide we see today, making the realm of marketing a place where all business owners can come together and create a safe space for inclusivity for everyone. As a former educator, Mayra was just really great to talk to. We talked a lot about her transition into education as an elementary school teacher, her transition outside of education, and what skills that she brought over from her time being an educator and being in the classroom, and how those skills transformed into her starting her own copy business and really going into how can we make ethical copy and how can we really make copy that is authentic and true to the diverse audiences and diverse learners. And so we know that there's been kind of a bit of an exodus of education. Educators are leaving the field. Either they're retiring or, they're leaving the field, or we're not getting as many incoming educators, and that's been kind of a big realm of conversation. So, finding ways that we can retain our education workforce is something that's been kind of top of mind for a lot of leaders in education. And as we think about how can we retain educators and how can we shift, the mentality in education, we know that it's been a field that's really high in burnout. We know that, educators just kind of go through the ringer through a lot of these different, things and ways that we approach education. And so that is something that, we talk about in this episode as well. But, sometimes the best form of self-care is just walking away from something that's just not working. So if you or someone are in a position, whether you're a teacher, you're in the classroom, you're feeling burned out, and you're kind of feeling outside of your value system, this is a really good episode to listen to. So feel free to share it with anyone that this might be helpful for them. And let's just jump into that episode. Hello and welcome to Conscious Pathways. I am joined by the fantastic Mayra Gómez-Sánchez. Welcome to Conscious Pathways.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, of course. I know we just met, I think it was like last week, and we had such a beautiful conversation. So I feel
we did. It came out so naturally.
It did. I feel like I've known you for like years, but we just met each other.
I know, and that's like the perfect way to like segment into like a new relationship is like just feeling someone's vibe immediately and being like, okay, I vibe with this person.
Yes. I think we both passed the vibe check. So look at us go.
Yes, the vibes
are here. Are you local to California?
I am. So I am originally from a small town called Wasco in the Central Valley, like near Bakersfield.
Yes.
But I moved to San Diego. I think it's gonna be like 8 years now that I've been here in San Diego. So yeah, it's been crazy going from a very small rural agricultural town to a city.
Yeah. And even like compared to other cities we have here in Southern California, like, LA, San Diego, it's a big county and a big city, but it still feels really small. So you can go to your little neighborhoods and it just feels like, oh, a little small San Diego
Yes,
town.
that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Like whatever vibe you're feeling, you go to that neighborhood. And you're right, it doesn't
Exactly.
feel so big, which I think is a nice middle ground for myself because
Yeah.
I still want like that somewhat of a slow paced life, but with a
hmm
balance.
Yes, a little bit of a balance. Yeah, I feel like I was in San Diego
Hmm.
for a while, then I moved to LA for a while, and I ended up liking LA more than I thought that I would. I thought it was going to be too much, and it was a lot. But I ended up liking it a lot more than I originally thought that I would. I don't want to live there again, but I did like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
People vibe with different types of environments, and
hmm
if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, like, luckily you have the
Yeah.
capacity to move where you feel comfortable.
Exactly, exactly. I feel like that's the beauty of, Southern California. There's a space for everyone to kind of exist. You want big city? We got that. You want beach town? We got you.
Hmm. That's
You
right.
want to live in the
That's
desert? We
right.
got you.
Exactly. Your choice.
It is your choice. Live your life, homie.
Hmm.
um, so tell me a little bit about your journey into education. Who or what inspired you to want to be an educator?
I grew up really not knowing what I wanted to do at all. Like I just, went to school, and then once it got to be time to go to college,
Mm,
even with that, I was like, I don't really know where I want to go to college. And I remember I just got like a brochure from the UCs,
mm,
and I saw a beach, and I'm like, that looks nice. And it was UC Santa Barbara. So I'm like, I'm going to go there because there's a beach.
makes sense.
And so I went there to school, and I just started taking classes that caught my attention. And I noticed that the pattern of those classes were based around education and sociology.
Mm,
And now looking back, almost, 12 years ago, I started seeing that, oh, well, no wonder I liked those classes because the theme was always based on like human relationships, how
mm,
people interact with each other and how that can make a positive or negative difference in someone's life. Um, and and that's what I'm like, oh, that's it right there. The human
uh,
relationships is what caught my attention. So I took lots of those courses to the point where I had enough to major in sociology and minor in education.
mhm,
Um, and with that minor in education, I had to volunteer a certain amount of hours at the local elementary schools in the Santa Barbara area
mhm,
as a teacher's assistant. And I really liked that.
yeah,
So once I graduated with my bachelor's, I decided to go straight into a 1 year combined teaching credential
mhm,
program and a master's in education at UCSB. So I did their
wow,
Gravette's Graduate School of Education. And then in that 1 year, we had placements where I was placed half the year in a lower elementary and then the other
mm,
half in a higher elementary. So for half the year, I was in a sixth grade classroom,
mhm.
and then the second half of the year, I was in a kindergarten classroom. So it was
Wow.
nice to see two ends of the spectrum.
Mhm,
My first year teaching was in a town near my hometown,
mm,
and I taught first grade, and I really loved it because the kids were so excited, so curious,
mhm,
so sweet, and because I loved it so much, when I went on to teach my second year, I actually did move to San Diego, and I was hoping that I could continue with the lower grades again,
mhm.
not knowing, right, because it's not my choice. But
Yeah.
luckily, I felt like luck was on my side, and I taught kindergarten, and
Wow.
then from there, I was just kind of between those grades. Like the following year was first grade for like a few years, and then a few years passed, and then it was second grade,
Mm,
and that was really it. So it's between K through second, and I just really enjoyed, like I said, the kids were always just curious, excited about school.
mhm,
And I loved creating lessons that were based off their interests. So every year, there's a new group of kids, new group of interests. The years are passing, so there's new trends that they like.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, if they like this, let me see if I can make a lesson out of that so I can keep them engaged.
Nice.
Um, and so I was feeling like I was always on the creative mode. Like, how can I make this
Mm.
engaging for them? How can I make this fun for them so they want to come to school? So yeah, that led up to me teaching for a few years, and now I am a copywriter. So I did transition out of
Mm.
teaching, but I still consider myself an educator because I'm still like teaching my clients now
Yeah.
about marketing, but more in the sense of like how to be ethical about it. And my heart is still in education, so I make sure that I always have clients that are in the education realm.
Hmm. Yes, yes. That's like a beautiful transition into that. Because do you want to tell us a little bit more about like what copywriting is and like why is it important?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was getting towards a certain point in my teaching career, I was starting to feel a little bit burnt out, and I
Mm.
was starting to see what other avenues I could take with all the skills that I've gained. So I just went on Google and I was like, what jobs do teachers do after
Mm.
teaching? Something like that. And what popped up was copywriting. And back then, I didn't know what that was. So I'm like, what? Well, what's copywriting? And I just
Mm.
started going through a rabbit hole of research of information, and it pretty much just like went down the lines of like it's the words that people read on their screen, whether it's like on their website, on someone's website,
Mm.
a page that's where you're going to buy something, emails that you open from a business.
Mm.
That's the words that are, and they're persuading you to take a certain action. So when I first read that, I was like, okay, well, that sounds kind of sleazy. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. But then as I kept going through my research, I started coming across really ethical copywriters who were more about marketing, but marketing ethically to where the
Mm.
people who are reading the words are feeling empowered. They're excited to buy the service or to buy the product. I'm like, okay, I could stand by that. Is
Mm.
writing ethically, and then on top of that, I'm like, well, I'm still really focused on helping others, whether it be in the education space or even if they're not educators, but they're in like the products. They sell products or they sell other services, as long as whatever that is, it's to benefit someone, mentally, spiritually, emotionally,
Mm.
physically. Basically, the person who is receiving that product or service is feeling good,
Mm.
and it's sustainable, it's ethical, then I would stand by it.
Yeah.
So I started, searching for those type of clients, and thankfully that's been my clientele. Been
Mm.
surrounded with product based business owners, service based business owners, and it's all been in that realm of like them wanting to bring good into the world.
Yes. And what I love about, your entire journey and your story is that connection between like when you were looking at those classes and looking at the themes in the classes that you're wanting to take and going into education and sociology is that, you're connecting to that. I want to be with people and I want to, build relationships and I want to, focus on those relationships and at the core of it, it's people, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a lot of reasons why people go into education, with that mindset of like, I want to help people. I want to help students. I want to help kids. Right. It's really that relationship component, is what a lot of us when we're going into education is what we're doing. And
Yes.
I love that you're still utilizing that passion for people and, a similar way, if not, within the educational system, but you're still utilizing that and wanting to do that in ethical and in important ways. Like you're still staying true to like who you are as a person. You're not losing that aspect. It's actually enhancing your business and your practices. And I think that's a really beautiful aspect of what you're bringing to the table, which is great.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany. And I definitely resonate with that. And that's what I wanted. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, it ate me up for the last couple of
Mm-hmm.
months of me wondering if I should switch careers. Like I felt
Mm-hmm.
guilt, I felt like a failure,
Mm-hmm.
I cried a lot,
Yeah.
and then I finally got to the point where I'm like, I know I'm not bringing my best self to the table anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was going through a lot mentally and emotionally, and I'm like, this isn't serving me and it's not serving my kids because they feed off my behavior and it's not fair to
Mm-hmm.
them. especially because they're so young at the age group I
Yep.
had. Like they deserve a teacher who is going to be very excited and motivated.
Mm-hmm.
um, and as much as I tried towards the end, I just felt like it wasn't, I was faking it. And
Mm.
I'm like, I don't want them to see that. Like, it's like I said, I felt like it wasn't fair to them. And
Yeah.
um, I think for so long I was like trying to be selfless,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like, it's okay if I want to be selfish for a little bit, especially
Mm.
if it's going to help me, better my mental health. So when I finally took that step back, it was like a mixture of emotions. Like I felt
Yeah.
relief, but I also felt sadness. I felt happy, but I also felt nostalgia. It was like these back and forth emotions. um, but it's going back to what you said. When I finally did make the leap, I was like, well, I'm doing this now, but I'm going to bring everything that I learned with teaching into my copywriting career, and especially that
Mm.
those foundational values of like meaningful work, helping others, and just bringing good into the world because
Mm-hmm.
we need it.
Yes, we need all of that we can take. And I remember when I felt the same things when I was, leaving the classroom. I felt like, oh, I'm failing at this, or, I couldn't do it, or like, I spent all this time studying and going to school to do this specific
Hmm.
thing. Like, there's nothing else I can do because this is the one thing that I studied and know
Hmm.
how to do. Um, and I was also looking at different career paths and looking at, okay, where can I basically make money essentially? And a lot of things are coming up as like sales. And I was like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, this kind of feels sleazy. Like, I don't think I can sell something if
Hmm.
I don't personally feel passionate about it, if I don't feel connected to it, if I don't feel like it's, for the public good, if it's helping people. I can't just like
Hmm.
sell stuff just to sell it. Some people can do that and more power to you, but I,
Yeah.
I can't do it.
No,
um,
I'm right there with you. I'm like, I had to learn like sales in an ethical manner because I don't want
yeah.
to feel gross.
Yeah, like I don't want to feel icky at the end of the day, and so
Yes.
it's just, yeah, it's like finding your space in that realm. And so I'm happy that you have found yourself, and like how you could still like have that connection to being an educator, and kind of how that's supporting what you're doing, outside of the classroom. And like I said, I've been there. Some I just got really burnt out, and it wasn't just the classroom, right? It was, life things was happening, and then on top of that, being in the classroom, it's not easy every day. There's struggles, and there's, it's never usually the kids. Usually it's, trying to figure out like, okay, we're having challenging behaviors, how can I help this, how can I help, how can I support. So it's never the child themselves, it's either like the system that you're working in, the school system,
Mm-hmm.
or the actual school itself, or sometimes it's,
Mm-hmm.
parents, or just things like that. And so the amalgamation of
Mm-hmm.
everything that gets to you, and it just, it's a field that has a really high level of burnout. And like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned before, when you're burned out, it's really hard to bring your whole and authentic self to the table. So I'm a big advocate for, taking a break when you need it, and knowing that very likely education is not going anywhere. So, if you ever decide you want to go back, it's still probably going to be there in some capacity. So you can always
Oh
go
yeah,
back into the
definitely.
classroom. And I feel like the times that I've stepped back into the classroom after kind of going off doing something else, go working in nonprofits, go doing just anything else for a little bit, and the times that I stepped back in the classroom, I have, come back with so much knowledge. I've come back refreshed. I've come back more patient. Um, and I've just come back as my whole self, and I've enjoyed the act of education more when I took that break. Because, like you said, you can't show up as your whole self, and you can't really give your students what they need if you're, the whole adage, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's like, well, that's
Yes.
it's
Yeah, no.
yeah.
You got to do what's good for you at the end of the day because
Mm-hmm.
you're the one at the front of the classroom. So,
Yeah.
you know, do what is going to be good for you. And um there's so many amazing like educators out there. And it's, for me, even though I'm now on the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
I am just have like the most deep respect for teachers and anyone in the
Mm-hmm.
education space. Like I know that when my time comes to have children, I am going to be at that teacher's right hand side. Like, what do you need
Mm-hmm.
from me? I will help you. I'll be in your classroom. Like,
Yep.
you tell me.
I feel that. Um, so when you were deciding, to make that career, shift into copywriting, what did that look like for you? What did that journey look like?
So the idea started coming up around 2021, like a year after the main
Mm-hmm.
shutdown with the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it was just an idea. And that's when I did start like going on Google and typing in those like phrases, like, what else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then that year really just consisted of researching copy, like what copy was,
Mm-hmm.
and programs that I could potentially take. And of course, with the algorithm, the your phone and your laptop knows what you're looking at. So then I started
Yeah.
getting ads about copywriting, and then finally by the the following year, the beginning of 2022, um, I kind of already knew like, okay, this is the path I want to take now that I did a lot of research.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, on top of that, by the beginning of 2022, my mental health was really starting to go down. Like it was already
Mm-hmm.
like kind of like starting, in 2021, but
Yeah.
2022, I was already like to the point where like I was starting to feel like foggy minded. Like I felt like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't fully there. I'm like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
So I felt like I really needed to take some type of action. And finally, I decided on a program where I just felt it was really ethical, and I would learn copy, but I would learn it in a way where it wouldn't be slimy, wouldn't be gross. It would
Mm-hmm.
be like connected to the person behind the brand. So I took the dive into paying for a course, which I've never done in my life. Like I was so into the old school mode of like you got to go to a school and
Mm-hmm.
take classes, and get your degree. So this world of like online businesses, I was like, well, I don't know you. Like, are you
Yeah.
trustworthy? Are you just
Mm-hmm.
gonna take my money and run? But no, being the skeptic that I am, I definitely like researched the person and like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is a legit business. And it was a hefty price. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to be in debt. But then, luckily, after definitely a very in depth conversation with my
Mm-hmm.
husband, he knew how much I was struggling. And he's like, I think this is going to be good for you. And I know you're like a very driven person. Like, I know you're going to make the most of it. Like, it'll be worth it. So
Mm-hmm.
we took the leap and I paid for the course. And yeah, I just dove in and took all the notes that I could, being like the lifelong learner that I am, and ask questions on it. I would attend all the calls that I could, or watch replays, if I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
able to, because again, during this time period I was also teaching, so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
fully just like
Yeah.
go straight into it. I was teaching, and then I would come home and learn about copy,
Mm-hmm.
and that was tiring, because you're already tired from the day being in the
Yeah.
classroom and then learning more. But in those hard times I was able to, obviously keep the money flowing, right? Got to pay the bills.
Yep. Yep.
And then after some time of learning, I was able to get some clients while still teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got that practice in with like going through the whole process of what it takes to onboard a client, and, going through proposals and contracts, writing the copy, delivering it to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I got comfortable, then I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready now. I'm ready to fully go into this. So
Nice.
I went fully in as of last October, so October 2023. Right, wait, yeah, that's correct, 23. And that was again, that's where that point where I was like, I was relieved, but then I was sad, but then I was happy, but
Mm-hmm.
then I was nostalgic. Like, and also, what did I do? Like, was this the right choice?
Yeah.
But I just followed my gut and I ripped it off like a band-aid. Obviously, ending it well, where I let my school know in advance and
Mm-hmm.
helping them with the transition. Um, but yeah, once it was all said and done, I'm like, it felt weird that first week where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to a classroom.
Yeah.
I'm not going to create a lesson plan. So it was definitely a time of transition, still having clients, but mentally like transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And now, because a few months have passed of me doing this full time, um, I no longer feel that. I feel really at peace. I feel happy, um, and I'm just thankful that I went on that journey. And obviously, I'm still going on it. Like, not gonna lie, that some days they're not all perfect days. Some days I still
Mm-hmm.
cry, and wonder, but overall, I do feel like this just sense of peace that came over me.
Mm, yes. And I remember feeling that way too when I had kind of made a shift and, started, managing a nonprofit. And it was weird not going into the classroom and not having my own
Hmm.
classroom. And like, it was a lot of weirdness around it. But at the same time, it did feel like pretty relieving. And then I realized I was still using all of the strategies that I was using, with my students in the classroom, just
Oh
using
yeah.
that with adults. And I'm like, oh, okay, you work with young children often enough, and you just learn that really at the end of the day, all they want to know is that they are seen, they are heard, that their input is
Hmm.
valued. Um, and it's the same thing with working with other people. Make sure that they feel
Oh
seen,
yeah.
that they're heard, their input is valued, and that'll take you a really long way. And so just my pathway into management was really guided by, okay, if I can do this with 2-year-olds, I can do this with anybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest takeaway I feel like I could take from teaching is like the active listening. We as
Yes.
educators had to practice so much active listening,
Mm-hmm.
that it became second nature. And that was like the first biggest thing I felt a lot of confidence in when I
Mm.
transitioned. It's like, I know how to actively listen. I did this
Yeah.
for a living for, X amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that has come just so naturally, communicating, right? Learning how to take complex information and, changing it up to make it
Mm.
relatable and understandable for whoever you're trying to target. So I'm like, well, that's teaching right there. Like,
That's
you
teaching.
take a
Yeah.
complex lesson and you're gonna teach it to second graders.
Yeah.
How can I change up this language for them to understand? Well, same with copy. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
here's this big task on this topic. How can I change it up to for that audience to be excited about it, to really
Mm-hmm.
digest the information in a way that it doesn't overwhelm them? So I'm like, yeah, there's so many things that I could take from teaching into this that I'm like, I got this.
Yep. Yep. It's such like a fun, empowering moment when you're doing it. You're like, oh, what am I so nervous about? Like I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, yes.
It's the same thing, just a different way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what kind of advice would you have for educators who are kind of contemplating making that career shift, but like aren't really sure what to do or how to do that?
Yeah, I would definitely start thinking about like what brings you curiosity.
Mm,
And with whatever that curiosity is, the online world is your oyster. Start typing things in about that thing that brings you curiosity, and let it take you down that rabbit hole of information.
mm,
um, and then once you kind of know, like, okay, yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking for, I would say then start networking with people in that niche, like on
mm,
LinkedIn or Instagram. Start following them, ask questions, ask a lot of questions. And
mm.
I feel like that's what has helped me. It's like, okay, well, I know I like this. Now let me find other copywriters.
Yeah.
Let me see what they're talking about. Oh, I didn't really understand that part. Let me ask them. And
Mm,
that just leads to like, oh, a conversation, like you and I had a conversation, then maybe
mm-hmm.
that person has resources for you, and you can they can vouch for it. It's like a person is vouching for it. And that makes it more like, okay, I want to try it too. So I would definitely start with that path, is like, see what you're curious about,
Mm.
research it, and then start networking with people in that niche of what you're curious about.
Yes. I think that networking component is commonly like it's misunderstood or we forget about it, but networking is so important. Just reaching out to people, whether that's on places like LinkedIn or just attending events. And I know it can be kind of scary just like talking to random people.
Yeah.
um, I know I definitely got really nervous about it at first. Like, what am I supposed to say? I'm just going to reach out to people. But generally speaking, people like to talk about themselves and what they do. And so if you're reaching out, just asking questions about themselves and what they do,
Mm-hmm.
they're very
Hmm.
likely to respond positively to that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And, sometimes people won't respond, and like, that's okay. People have busy lives. It's not the end of the world. And,
Oh yeah.
but that networking component is so, so integral and so important. Just really connecting with people and seeing what's out there in the world. And, there, people are very likely to just respond and just answer a few questions, make it easy for them. But it's so important. I feel like a lot of the career advances I've made in my life, especially the last couple of years since I've been back in San Diego, have been because I've just put myself in spaces where there's other people who are doing similar things.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, I know so and so does, this thing that you're asking about, like, I'll put you in touch with them. And
Hmm.
that's opened so many pathways and so many doorways to things that I couldn't even ever imagined, had I not just been reaching out to people and just asking questions and just connecting and like really just focusing on making those connections. I listened to this one podcast, and it's Balanced Black Girl, amazing podcast. Just
Yeah.
shamelessly
Shout
plugging her
out.
in there. Um,
Heck yeah.
but she was talking about how she does networking, and she's an introvert like me and just would prefer to just be at home. And I'm like, I get that. How do you do this? And one piece of advice that she had was just, if you go to a networking event or you're going out or you're going to a conference or something, is that have in mind that you want to make a meaningful connection with like just one person, just one
Hmm.
meaningful connection with one person. Um, and that I did that at a conference I went to recently, and I made a lot more meaningful connections, but it was so much less stressful when I put in my mind, like, the only thing you have to do is make one meaningful connection with one person. That's it. And it
Yes,
took
I like
all
that.
the
It's less
stress.
overwhelming.
It's so much less overwhelming because you walk into the space, you're like, there's so many people. How am I gonna make myself, unique? How am I gonna like meet people? How am I gonna enter into a conversation? It's like, nah, I only just need to connect with one person. That's it.
Yes, and yeah, I agree. Like, don't give yourself information overwhelm.
Yeah.
Just exactly following that advice. I agree. I'm also an introvert. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also partly why I chose copywriting because it's like, oh, I don't have. I mean, yes, I interact with clients, but I can
Mm-hmm.
also be behind my screen
Yeah.
and take time to be in a quiet place for a little bit, and then come back
Mm-hmm.
out and then come back in. So, I
Yeah.
agree. It takes practice. You just gotta rip it off like a band-aid,
Yep.
put yourself out there. When I barely started networking in person like 2 months ago, and that
Mm.
first time I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't usually what I do.
Yeah.
But you're right. Once I was there, and I just like went to one person,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like, oh, I met this person, come join me, and it's like
Yeah.
became this ripple effect, and it was a really positive experience. So I definitely agree with that piece of advice.
Yes. Yeah. That was a game changer for me in terms of just networking, and because I would go to events and then I would get too scared to like say or do anything because I was just overwhelmed. And then I just would like leave, and I'm like, I mean, I gained a lot of information, but I don't think I networked. And so just having that in my mind, like, just connect with one person. That's all you got to do. And
Mm-hmm.
now my networking game, I feel like, is pretty strong. I just talk
Yeah,
to
there you
people now.
go.
But also
Yes.
just knowing how to take care for yourself as an introvert. And I know that I don't try to stack too many things on days I know I'm going to be out at a conference or out networking, because that's not going to set me up for success.
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
You got to know yourself.
Know yourself. If you're an extrovert, go
Mm-hmm.
out there and extrovert. You're fine. This part of this conversation is
Mm-hmm.
not for you.
Yeah. I was like, is there such thing as like a like both like an introverted extrovert or
Yeah.
extroverted introvert?
Yeah. There's like an ambivert that's like a little bit of both. And I think, this book that I was reading is kind of like off topic, but this book that I was reading, about like highly sensitive people, the way that she kind of described it is like, it's like a scale for introverts, right? So there's sometimes when you're just, being really social and like, it's just like our battery just runs out a lot faster than extroverts. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like I don't like interacting with people. It's just I have just a small battery for it. And then once it's out, I'm like, okay, I want to go to bed now. I'm tired. I'm ready to
Yeah, no,
go.
I feel like that's me. Like I am an introvert at my core,
Hmm.
but I can turn it on when I need to. Kind of like, as a teacher, that's how I practice it. Like
Yeah.
especially with the littles, you're
Hmm.
out there and you're
Yep.
enthusiastic in your face and
Yep.
your eyes, but then come home like, okay, I need to be me and
Yep.
be quiet.
Yep. Yeah, because when you're in the classroom, you're on pretty much the entire
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, it's just you got to be on, and then once you get home, you're like, okay, I'm gonna turn it off, and I don't want to
Hmm.
be on until tomorrow.
Yes, yes, exactly. Good balance.
Good balance. Good balance. So I know with your current clients that you seek out, you mentioned that they're in and around the realm of education. So can you tell me a little bit about how, in your role as a copywriter and as a small business owner, how you kind of continue to advocate for education and social justice?
Yeah, so when I partner with clients, especially those that are of the education realm,
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I'm using my communication skills with them to make sure that I'm able to really understand their mission so that I don't, misconstrue it when I'm writing things for their socials or things for their website. I also want to make sure that when I partner with them, um, that they are really trying to solve like problems at the root
Mm-hmm.
so that those who are listening or reading whatever way they're marketing themselves are taking it in to see like, okay, I see the problem.
Mm-hmm.
How can I solve it? Because I see how they're solving it in whatever realm they're in. Now, how can I use those tools for me to do it on my end? So it's really um, writing in a way that helps build like inspiration and resilience for, especially
Mm-hmm.
like again, right now I'm talking more in the education space with the clients that I work with in the education realm.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so beautiful. I know that you tend to work with, like I said, small businesses and BIPOC businesses, and so I think that's incredibly important, especially in that small business realm. Seeing how, a lot of small businesses are comprised of women of color, but also women of color tend to get less of the funding. So
Hmm.
kind of seeing how you know these businesses tend to have more hurdles and more barriers and to get to that level of success. And so knowing that there's someone out there who's kind of in their corner and kind of really takes that time to understand like what are your missions and what is your goals. And I think that really lends itself into that social justice component of really elevating businesses and elevating these voices and the products or services that they have to offer, and like kind of bringing that to that main stage. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that because that is definitely a big reason why I niched into like diversity driven
Mm-hmm.
brands and leaders because they are aware that they want to be more inclusive in their marketing
Mm-hmm.
so that the audience that they're attracting um, actually resonates with what they're saying. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this, if I'm the audience member and I'm reading about a certain brand,
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel like, oh, wow, they're really speaking to me. I want to see more
Yeah.
about what they have to say or sell
Mm-hmm.
versus the brand posts something and then the reader reads it and say, oh, that's kind of cringy because I can
Mm-hmm.
see that they're trying to get to me, but it is
Yeah.
definitely not authentic and I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, well, that's where I come in. I'm
Yeah.
going to be the bridge between diversity driven leaders and business owners and the diverse community, which right now, from
Yes.
the latest census, the BIPOC community makes up 42% of the population in the US. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of people that
Yeah.
you're trying to authentically market to. So whether you're a BIPOC business owner
Mm-hmm.
or you're not, but you want to be inclusive of your
Yeah.
marketing, it's so important to have a copywriter who's like socially aware and able to make those words connect authentically with everybody.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you mentioned that authentic kind of connection, right? Especially if you're not from that community, and you want to be inclusive to another community, it can be difficult to know, like, am I saying the right thing? Like, I don't want to get in trouble for saying the wrong thing, and it's just there's a lot of nerve-wracking things that kind of come with that. But you still want it to be inclusive and authentic, and you want people to see messages that they can connect with and like know that this is a safe space for them to want to be a part of. And when I think of like the brands and the businesses that I mostly either want to work with, or the bands and businesses that I want to give my money to, right? Just being really socially conscious about that. Um, they're the ones who are doing that, that are trying to be, inclusive, and are actually not just saying it, but you can see it with their practices, like their business
Mm-hmm.
practices, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it always kind of grinds my gears when I see, I go on a website and it's a beautifully done website, and the word diversity is on there like 42 times.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just talking about, oh yeah, justice and diversity, but then I go and I look at your board, and your board's not diverse, and I look at your team and your
Mm-hmm.
team's not diverse.
Mm-hmm.
um it's like, okay, so you're talking the talk, but you're not walking the walk, and that's not
Yes.
authentic. And we see right through that in a
Yeah.
lot of sense. So it's yeah, you just kind of make sure that those are in alignment, because the I would say that the consumer today, like, we're getting a lot more savvy, and
Mm-hmm.
we're getting a lot more picky about where we want to spend our time and money and energy. And the strategies that used to work aren't the ones that still work today.
Yes, so definitely, I resonate wholeheartedly with all of that, where it's
Hmm.
like we are socially conscious consumers in
Yeah.
today's world, and we want, like you said, give our money to people who have strong values,
Hmm.
who want to help others, and again, being inclusive, given that we are in such a diverse, living in such a diverse world.
Hmm.
And it really takes, I feel like a lot of BIPOC business owners and brands know that because they are of the community.
Mm.
And I think the missing piece right now is getting those brands and businesses that are not BIPOC to
Hmm.
join, because I feel like there's still a divide between BIPOC business owners and businesses that aren't BIPOC.
Yeah.
Like there's just these two different worlds, and it's like we don't need to like be enemies. Like
Yeah.
the way that we're going to impact the community is by working together and
Hmm.
being helpful to one another. So that's why I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I write, I have written, for BIPOC brands, but
Mm.
no, like that's not like the only people I write for. Like I want to write for those that
Yeah.
aren't BIPOC so I can help you with your messaging to
Yeah.
be inclusive, so that the BIPOC community who are conscious consumers, you know,
Hmm.
really genuinely want to buy what you sell. Obviously,
Yeah.
making sure that what they're selling is also something that I stand by.
Yes. Yes. I think that's important. As a small business owner, it can be hard to say no when there's like money on the table, and it can be hard to say, like, this isn't a right fit or anything. But I think there's a lot of respect in that too, of just, this isn't in alignment. And that goes into that networking piece of, like, this isn't in alignment with me and my values, but I know someone else who might be in alignment, or I know someone else who I can refer you to. And there's a lot of respect and dignity in being able to do that. But knowing that you understand where your passions and where your values are, and where the line is for you, and just saying, these are the parameters in which I can work within. um that's an important thing. And especially as we're thinking about career shifts, and we're thinking about you know what's important to us as educators. Really be, I always tell incoming um teachers to really just sit down and understand what your values are as an educator. Like, really sit it
Hmm.
down, write a list. Those values might change over time, they might shift over time. Some things that are important to you at one point in your life might not be as important at a different point in life. um, but really just sit down and have your values, and either put that somewhere where you can see it pretty regularly. And kind of keep going back to that, because as you kind of go throughout your teaching journey, your values are going to be the ones that are kind of your guiding light and your guiding force. um, and so
Yes.
just being really sure and really certain of that. And when you start seeing yourself, making decisions that are outside of your values, when you see yourself, either doing things or saying things or thinking things that are outside of those values, that's kind of an indicator that something's off. Whether that's the space
Hmm.
is off, or whether that's something that's happening, like there's something off that's happening. And let me reconfigure, let me, like, recalibrate a little bit on what am I looking for and what do I need. But your values are going to be those things that will keep you grounded throughout your journey. And
Hmm.
they'll tell you. You just got to listen to
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah, you'll feel it. It's a
Yeah.
feeling. You will feel it. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And my version of writing down my values has been a vision board, where I
Yes.
like I pulled out magazines, I cut out
Mm-hmm.
words and pictures that resonated with me, put it
Yes.
on nothing too big because I just wanted it like
Mm.
small enough but big enough where I can see it.
Yeah.
And then I put it on my mirror because that's where I get ready in front of my mirror
Yes.
every day. So to this day it's there, and it's just like a nice reminder of like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Here's
Mm-hmm.
the motivation that I need on those days where I'm not feeling my best.
Mm-hmm.
And I have loved it. Like I know I can
Yeah.
make one every year, but the one that I made was in 2022 when I was ready to do that shift.
Yeah.
Um, and I still resonate with it to this day. So I'm like, it was meant to
Yes.
be.
It was meant to be. I love that you keep your
Hmm.
vision. And I think vision boarding is a really, really good way to go about that. I have mine on my desktop right now, so it's just hanging out right there. But and
Yes.
you can do that every year, and that go again, you're just rechecking in with yourself. What's important to me? What worked last year? What didn't work? But keeping those values and just knowing that in your heart and soul will help you to kind of make aligned decision and take aligned action towards, whatever it is that you're wanting to do. Obviously we want to keep teachers in school. We want to, um, we want to, make sure our teachers are happy and healthy and all those things. But
Hmm.
we also know that teaching is hard, and, life gets difficult. And when you're in that space of I'm burnt out, it's okay to take a step away. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to do something else. And that you're not a failure for doing that. You're just a human being who's human
Hmm.
being, if that's a
Yes,
word.
you're a human being.
Yeah. So do what you have to do to take care of yourself, and just again know when it's time to step back and step up. That's a big thing in social justice. Sometimes you're in
Hmm.
a position where you can lead, and sometimes you're in a position where you need to take a step back and let someone else lead. And there's no shame in that. That is a beautiful thing to just be aware of. So thank you for that. My last and final question for you is, how do you reimagine education?
So if I could, reimagine education, I would
Mm,
definitely make sure with its foundation, that it starts at home. And
mm,
that would, in a perfect world, mean that parents would have just books of different cultures, different
mm,
religions, different ways of upbringing. You know that the parents don't need to be the traditional parents that you see on TV.
mm.
Just so that kids can see that, okay, I'm being raised this way, but doesn't mean everyone
Yeah.
is being raised this way. And I feel like if they kids get that foundation with their
Mm,
parents, and then those type of books and lessons get weaved into when they start preschool to then when they go into kinder, and all the
yeah.
grades that lead up to graduation. Obviously, these type of books and lessons would go with their cognitive ability. I feel like it would
Mm,
help just our world so much more, because everyone would be more
yeah.
socially aware, be more accepting of the different places that people come from, and just be willing to learn, to not just think my way is the only way. That's how
Yeah.
we get divides. It's like, let me listen to you, and then you listen to
Mm,
me. Um,
yeah.
and I think that is like the biggest takeaway I would do, if I had to reimagine education.
Yes. I adore that, because there are different ways of life. Like you said, there's different languages, religions, cultures, right? And by ignoring them, it doesn't make them go away. They're still existing, right? And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
we want to have an accurate, view of the world, and we want to show children that, yeah, just because you're being raised one way doesn't mean like that's the only way that people are being raised. There's kids who believe in Santa Claus, and there's kids who aren't taught about Santa Claus. And you know
Hmm.
one way is not, bad or wrong. It's just the way that, people are being raised, and just being able to, respect that, and just understand that it's just different, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that we're different, and it's
Yeah.
okay that, people do things a different way, or they say something a different way. Because, as kids grow up, they can be kind of harsh sometimes to each other. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's unintentional, like they're not trying to be hurtful, but Yeah, kids sometimes don't have a filter. So,
Oh
you
yeah, like
know,
they're unaware to a point, and
yeah, they're unaware
if
to a
we
point.
like start introducing them to books and
Mm-hmm.
videos and lessons that are surrounded around being different, like everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
um I know my hope would be that it becomes ingrained in them to where it can be from the smallest of things where you do see
Mm-hmm.
less bullying in schools,
Yeah.
um to the bigger things, when they become adults that and get jobs, and
Mm-hmm.
become leaders of the next generation, that
Yes.
they are willing to collaborate with one another and make change to where any hatred we're seeing now can
Mm-hmm.
hopefully be diminished or lessened when they become adults.
Yes, 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 yes. Snaps for that. That was beautifully said.
Hmm.
Thank you
But that's
so
my
much.
hope.
Yes, yes, that's the hope. We want to see more people just being accepting and open and curious, and that's the goal. We just want more curiosity.
Hmm. Yes, curiosity is key.
Yes. Where can my audience find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, MyraGSanchezAgency.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mayra Gómez-Sánchez, or you can also find me on Instagram under my business name, Cultural Visionaries, and the handle for that is cultural_visionaries_.
Perfect. And I will link all of that in our show notes. So if you're curious to connect with Myra in any way and all those aspects, you can do that. But I want to thank you so much for joining me and engaging in this beautiful conversation. It just, again, felt like I was talking to someone that I've known for years. So,
I completely agree.
yeah, so great to have you on. And yeah, thank you. This was beautiful.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
Of course. Thank you for tuning into Conscious Pathways. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to also share or leave a rating and review. It really does help the podcast to grow and reach more listeners just like you. And until next time, don't forget to navigate your conscious journey with courage and kindness. And I'll see you there for more transformative conversations in education. Bye.